Here in the West Midlands, what should be a simple bit of legislation is causing a near revolution. 5 councils are openly defying the government, and councillors are saying that they'd rather go to prison than help gypsies.
I am protecting the interest of the English citizen, and it is the English citizen that is my concern. And if I've got to go to jail for what I'm doing today, well, I'll go to jail. But the thing is that we're not having Irish tinkers in Walsall, and that is final.
That man is a councillor from Walsall in Staffordshire. He's the one who started the anti-tinker campaign in the area, an area with a long history of tinker trouble. Councillor Wainwright and his followers say that it's the Irish tinkers in particular, and not so much the Romany gypsies, that they're getting at. They claim that chaos is created when tinkers move in with cars and lorries and trailers and simply park themselves wherever they can find space. They bring in bulldozers and tractors to move them on. But that seldom solves anything, for the tinkers simply move up the road till they find a new patch, probably in someone else's territory. It was to solve precisely that situation that the law for providing permanent sites was created. But in Walsall and the surrounding district, they're saying they won't have these sites at any price.
I am a firm believer that charity begins at home, and these have got to be paid for by the ratepayer of this town and the ratepayer of this country, to the tune of something like £6 million. If we've got £6 million to waste, let's give it to the old age pensioner. Let's give it to the people that are in slum dwellings. And there's 1,800,000 of those. There's 4 million homes in this country that are not up to modern day standards. If we have got money to spend, let us spend it on those. Never mind the tinker man. Let Ireland look after their own. We don't want them.
And we provided the tinkers with a site. We provided them with toilets. We provided them with water. There was a kitchen built out. And it was going to be made in time into a permanent site, which is what I wanted, you know. And afterwards, after a few weeks, I soon got to know I'd done the wrong thing.
Well, why?
Well, these people promised me that if they got the site, they would treat the residents with respect. They would be no nuisance to anybody. They would look after the property. And yet I found within a few weeks of them being in, the toilets that we paid for and put up were pulled down and sold as scrap. The lead pipe that they had for water was pulled off the tree that was on. A sewerage pump that was right by the camp was completely stripped completely and sold. The windows were smashed. The residents in the little hamlet by the site, they were subjected to, I would say, the worst terrorism that anybody has been subjected to in this country. They indecently assaulted a girl of 13 who lived right on the site, so much so that the father had to sell his house and move away from the site in case he got in trouble with he had 2 girls, and he threatened that if he went to the police that they would do the same to the other girl as well. And this is the reason he didn't report it to the police, but he bought a house somewhere else and moved away. The residents of the estate nearby were subjected to terror. This is fighting. They couldn't go shopping without there was fighting by the tinkers. The bread, the milk and everything that was on the step was stolen. They would come and ask for water in the houses, and if there was nobody about, they'd pinch whatever they could lay their hands onto.
Walsall Council has told the government straight that under no circumstances will we inflict upon our people a tinker camp. If the government comes along and makes us provide a site by telling us where this site will be, then I can tell you one of 2 things that will happen. One, that the councillors of Walsall will revolt against the government. 2, that the people of this area, of my area, and I think I speak for people of other areas too, will do this. If a tinker site is erected, they will turn it down.
And I would say on this particular subject of tinkers that a national referendum should be given. And I think the Minister is in a position to call for this. And once we have got the national referendum completed, I'm sure that the Minister will find out, and also members of Parliament, that the people of this country does not want the tinker, the Irish tinker, or any other tinker.
Between the councillors and the tinkers themselves lies an enormous gulf. Each regards himself as the victim of an impossible situation. The tinkers, first of all, deny that they are tinkers. They're all gypsies, they say, or travelling people. And they see themselves not as a hidden menace, but as a persecuted minority who aren't getting a fair deal. Their sites may be primitive, but it's not because they're social dropouts, they say. Many of them can't read or write. They have no offices, no telephones, often no bank accounts. But in spite of that, they run thriving businesses on scrap metal, second-hand furniture and antiques. Some of their trailers cost as much as £5,000, and they pay for them in cash. Mr. James Hanran, who runs a tarmacking business, owns several.
A lot of people feel that wherever you go, you tend to terrorise the public.
This, again, there's 50,000 of gypsies in England and in Ireland, and there might be 2% of those, which you get a very small percentage in any community for to do this sort of thing. Well, then the whole lot's blamed for this, terrorising people. Now, there is some will maybe pinch a bit of scrap metal or something of that description, and then the whole lot gets blamed for this, which I think is very unfair to the travelling people.
What about ordinary people? I mean, are you faced with suspicion and hostility wherever you go?
Yes, yes.
And what effect does that have on you?
Well, it has a very bad effect on us, you know, because everybody's suspicious if they're going to put out their milk is going to be taken, which never happens. Maybe 1 over 100 it will happen, and the whole lot gets blamed for that again. And it goes on this way all the time. It has been for the last years.
They feel now they don't want gypsies around them, no consideration. They feel as they want to keep shifting us till they get us right to the end of the sea somewhere.
Well, why has this happened? Why has this come about in recent years?
Well, it's these young generation was coming out. They want power behind them, and they've let the coloured people alone. Now it's we. This is what we feel, and I know this is true. They had something to do with the coloured people when they come in the country first. They didn't want them. And now they feel as we're a threat to them in some way. They don't want us. They don't want us to give them no votes or anything.
Well, how do they treat you? I mean, what examples can you give me?
Now,
of
if our children go to school, they won't let their children sit the side of our children. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you? They think there's something wrong with them or different to what their children is. But there's nothing different. They're human beings. And as for being dirty and filthy like they say we are, where's the dirt and filth? Why don't they come and see in our homes, turn our children's clothes up? Do this thing if they feel this much against us.
Would you ever consider settling down in a house?
No, no consideration. I wouldn't have a house. It's like jail to our people. It's like being behind bars. You don't get no freedom. And if they don't want us, stop on the side of them, a long way away from these their houses, how would they feel if we was next door to them?
The situation has been really stood on its head. Since we formed the Gypsy Council in 1965, we've been fighting to live within the law. And since the Caravan Sites Act came into effect, a law for the first time passed in our favour, then we feel we've put our case quite clearly. We want to live within the law. The question of taxes, well, our people feel at the moment when they pay taxes, all they're paying for is for a policeman, for a council official to come up and shift them. When we're living on sites and we have something back for our taxes, then we'll only be too glad to fall in with everybody else.
It's been suggested to me that there are something like 120,000 Irish tinkers in this country at the present time. Do you feel that's an accurate assessment?
It's a complete fantasy. There are, in fact, only 6,000 travelling people in Ireland. And the Ministry's own figures, carefully deducted with police surveys, was 15,000 travellers on the roads in England and Wales. And of those, not more than about 4,000, or let's say 400 families, have come over recently from Ireland.
I was also led to understand that you are capable of organising vast armies of tinkers and gypsies to converge on any particular spot in this country at any particular time. In other words, that you're a highly organised force.
We are a very tight community, and it is true that in the last 5 years that the expectations of our people have risen. We've been told that there are going to be sites, that we're going to get a fair deal, that our children are going to go to school. And the more these hopes and promises have been risen, the more our people are determined to stand their ground and refuse to be moved on. And this sometimes has led to very ugly scenes between ourselves and local councils. But local councils will bear out this, that where our families have moved into an area, perhaps 40 or 50 families at a time, and a caravan site has been provided, then the remainder of the families have moved out. In Wigan, 40 families moved in, a site was given for 15, the rest moved out on our instructions. And all we're asking for, that Wolverhampton, that Walsall, that other councils in this area should take 15 each. The rest will go into other areas.
Well, they've decided not to. What will you do?
If they decide not to, first of all, we must hammer the ministry to a firm statement that these councils will not be let off the hook, and that indeed they will face prosecution for breaking the law. And if the minister should not come out as firmly as is necessary, then the Gypsy Council itself is preparing to take out a writ and prosecute Walsall itself.
Let me just read you a couple of quotations. We must remember that although we are dealing with people who members of this council would not look upon as human beings in the normal sense, they have children who are likely to grow up to become a kind of sewer of society. That's one. There are some of these people you can do nothing with, and you must then exterminate the impossibles. Now, those statements, incredible as they seem, were made by 2 local councillors, and they give you some idea of just how deep this battle goes. There is absolutely no contact between the 2 sides, and what happens now depends entirely on Whitehall.